All right, ladies and gentlemen, my dear students, here we are. Another good day the Lord have made. We have to thank God for everything. We need to give gratitude to God. You know, like I always said, we don't deserve anything, right? But by the grace of God, we are here today to learn. And it's good we commit into the hands of God what we are going to do today to guide us, give us His wisdom, and so that we can be able to understand what we are going to do today. Right? So we are going to kickstart now. And remember, I said, don't worry, we're going to talk about that, right? Don't worry, don't panic, because this is what we've been doing for the past, you can say for the past 5 years. It's the same. So, where it comes to a situation whereby becoming challenging to you, I'm going to intervene to solve it. Right. Yes, we are working on the last topic. Yes, of course, I'm right to say the last topic, planning. Then we are going to work on page 136. If you have your book there, 136. You don't have it, but don't worry. Even if your book is not here, you need to listen attentively. Action plan, right? Action plan. So remember where we started. We talked about planning, right? Planning in terms of trying to strategize regarding what you need to do in future, right? What needs to be achieved and how you intend to go about in achieving what you set out to achieve. We talked about that planning. Then we talked about different types of planning, whereby we talk about the long-term plan, which we say is about the direction of the business in terms of strategic positioning, which we say is a long term, for example, 5 years to, as for 5 years. Then we talk about tactical planning, which is what we call the medium term plan, whereby you need to break down the broad plan from the strategic level, right, to a more actionable way of doing things. Then we talk about the operational plan, right, which relates to the how you need to achieve or to carry out the day-to-day activities of the business. Right. Then thereafter we talk about the different stages of planning, whereby we talked about the different steps, chronological step, if you will, on how you need to go about in doing your uh, planning. Right. First of all, we say you need to identify the threats and opportunity, the threats that can pose danger to you, that can hinder you from achieving your planned goals or objective or your mission statement, as you may like to call it. Then you need to identify as well the opportunities that are available, right? Because you as an entrepreneur, you need to look around to see where the opportunities are, where you can perhaps take advantage of the opportunities. And we talk about that. Then we talk about again how you need to formulate your objectives, right? When you look at the environment, you scan around, look at the threat, the opportunities, then based on that, you can be able to formulate your objective, right? You've seen where you need to be cautious in terms of the threat. Now you see where the opportunity is. Then you need to combine the two and come up with something on how you need to achieve what you intend to achieve by way of formulating your objectives. Then we talk about the assumption that need to be made. We say something that one can take for granted, but of which you know that is going to happen. You need to take those things into consideration, right? Then thereafter, you need to identify what we call alternative plans. We call it Plan B, right? What do we mean by alternative plans? When you are planning for something, like I explained to you yesterday, which is a typical example of or a typical, yeah, it's a good example of what I'm explaining here. That when you want to do something, you don't put the whole of your eggs in one basket. Putting your hope in one thing, right? You put all your hopes in one thing. What if that thing doesn't work out? What is going to happen to you? Then you fall flat. Do you understand what I'm trying to say? Right? You need to look for alternative plans. For example, you're planning to study, right? You can say, okay, let me apply to different universities. If UCT, you apply to UCT, you apply to UWC, listen to what I'm saying. It's a very good example, right? You apply to UWC, you apply to, uh, different universities. Then, why are you doing that? You are trying to make sure that, come what may, there will be something good for you. If you say, okay, let me apply to only UCT, then if at the end of the day you are not accepted at UCT, what is going to happen? You're going to stay at home, you're going to lose that, right? So when you decide to look at various options, then you say, okay, come what may, at least I will succeed in one. And obviously you're going to succeed. That is what we are talking about. Then you need to look at the alternative plans, which we say plan B, and do what we call a kind of feasibility studies. Right. Feasibility studies being done for the fact that you want to see the one that has the most benefit. Like the language I used yesterday, I said optimize, maximize. Because we are always looking for where we can gain most, right? Then you look for the one that got the maximum benefit. What then you pick up that one. That is what we say. We select the plan. Then you play around with the budget as well, because you need to know how much it's gonna cost you. Right. Work around that, then you launch your plan by implementing your plan. We talk about that. Now, today we are going to talk about the action plan, so, which is action plan is about you putting in practice what you have planned. When you plan something, as you are planning, is something that you need to do in future. So no matter how it is, it's like you are planning something or doing something in the cloud. So now you must bring it down to execute it. That is what we're talking about in terms of action plan. You need to actionalize what you have planned, right? So action plan, as we have it here, we said, yeah, it's an action plan is a simple but highly effective planning technique. An action plan details how we are going to implement the broader plan, right? What you've planned, you need to strategize in terms of how you are going to do it. So a good action plan must have the following information, right? Action, what must be done, right? Person responsible. It's like a roster. How many of you have seen a roster before? It's like a schedule. In project management, we call it a schedule. Huh? You've done it before. Right. In project management, we call it a schedule. Right? A schedule must have what needs to be done. So we call that one task that needs to be done. Right? Who is responsible for doing the task? It must be there. Because when you prepare an action plan, right? What needs to be, what you want to achieve, right? You must be able to detail it out. What exactly needs to be achieved? That means what specific task needs to be done. Then who is to do? You must assign it to somebody. For example, if you have a company, right? Remember, yourself cannot do everything. Let's say there's a company now. We are running a company. I'm the manager, the operations manager, right? You are the supervisor. You are the supervisor responsible for different portfolios, right? For example, you are the operation manager, the production manager. Then you are the HR. You see, we got different tasks to do, right? So when you are allocating tasks to people, you should be when you are preparing an action plan, You must put there what needs to be done, right? The person that is responsible, what time in terms of deadline, the time when the task needs to be started, and when you need to hand in the task, like a deadline. So when you got that type of action plan, it becomes much more clearer for people to actionalize because you know what needs to be done. You know now who is responsible. For example, if at the end of the day the job is not done, you know who responsible. So the task was allocated to you. Why didn't you do it? So that is what we are talking about, right? So an action plan must have the following information. Action, what must be done. That is what we call task. Next year, you're going to do that in project management. We call it task or activities, right? Then, person responsible, of course, who will do the work, date of completion, the deadline, as I've explained to you, and check all these things are according to plan. If you are an operation manager or whosoever you are a supervisor, whatever, it's your responsibility to see that what have been decided to be executed or done is done. So now we have an example of an action plan, a typical example, right? Which is on page 137, right? Perhaps in the exam they can ask you to draw up an action plan, right? It's not difficult. You might be given a case study. You know what is a case study? Story, right? Then they will ask you to draw an action plan. So the basic element that you need to know, perhaps you can be given a template. You know what is a template? You know a template. They can give you a template, right? They put this type of heading, action, person responsible, date of completion, check. That check is for a remark. Okay, let me draw it for you. No? You've got, oh, all of, how many of you doesn't have their books here? This my body's a mess. So if you are asked to draw an action plan, man. So what you need to do is this thing is difficult to wipe now, right? Are you seeing what I'm doing? If you switch off this thing, gonna be video gonna be dark, right? Man. This thing is. I don't want to use a permanent stuff here. Then we're gonna be in trouble. Okay, right? Action, right? Then you have person responsible. Then you have date of completion, right? Then you have remarks. You can call this one remarks or check, right? So it's like this. Then what needs to be done? The task. For example, we got here. Ask George to let me. Okay. For example, let's say clean the uh, purchase purchasing of stock, right? Then who is responsible? What is debit? Who is debit? Oh, right? The date it must be completed, right? Okay. Let's say 20th August 2026, right? So later here we're gonna put a remark whether it's done whatever, right? So this is how you need to draw up an action plan. Does it make sense to you? Right. Okay. Here we're talking about setting entrepreneurial goal, talk about vision, mission statements, and the vision strategy, right? We've done that one in LO, right? We say entrepreneurial planning begin by setting entrepreneurial goal in terms of what needs to, uh, this reflect what you want to achieve. When setting the entrepreneurial goal, we must consider the mission, the vision statement. Have you done the mission, vision, and all those stuff in LO? In LO, right? The mission statement, right? The vision to set for a business, you need to think about the values and attitude that you need to be reflected in the business. The vision of an entrepreneur is broad and descriptive. What do we want to achieve with this company, right? What you want to achieve. For example, now, like you got a company, right? You got a small business you are running. You got your own vision, where you want to be, what you want to achieve, right? By doing that business that reflect your values, right? So that is what we are talking about. Then we need to know about the mission, which is a brief and described description of the purpose of the business. Why does the business exist? Right. Those are the things that you reflect in the mission. Then the strategy, how you will make your mission a reality. How you are going to make your mission a reality. The strategies, different ways on which you want to make your mission a reality. So this is your strategy, and yeah, this is your strategy and must be one of each aspect of your business. So there are some of the strategies that you must consider, right? For example, when you look at your product, right? What will you provide? Will you have a product range or just so for you to be able to fulfill your mission, for your business, you need to know what you need to provide. For example, if it is your product, right, you look at your product in terms of the quality that you want your product to attain to be able to meet up with the customer's requirement in a way of you being able to satisfy your mission statement or your vision. Then those are the things you need to consider. Then the customer, who are they and where are they located? You must look at the area, that aspect of your customer, who you want to sell your business to, your product to, or your services to. Where are they located? Right. Remember, we talk about the demographic structure. It's very important for you to know the profile of your target market, your customers, the people that are going to buy from you. Where are they located? For example, if you need to create awareness, right? If you don't know where they are, you won't be able to design a kind of uh, marketing strategy that can be able to reach out to your customers. Then you need to look at the logistic in terms of how you are going to distribute your product, right, to your customers if needs be, right. So you need to look at the resources, right. Then, of course, one of the most important thing that you need to look at again is the profitability. Look, if your business is going to make money, is there any point for you to start a business? No, you need to look at that, right? Even though you got your own mission and vision statement in terms of where you want to take your business to, but you must still look at your level of profitability of the company. Because if the company is not profitable, what is going to happen? One of these days, the business is going to close up, right? It's going to liquidate. So those are the things that we need to talk about. Then you need to look at friends and families in terms of support. Then you need to look at the network. You see, business, if you have a business, contact is very important, right? It's very important to the success of your business. You know what you call networks, contact, right? For example, now you got a small business. I'm talking to you now, right? Focus. You got a small business. You need a lot of contact for your business to grow, right? Network, we call it network, right? Because when you've got contact, you've got network with people. So what is going to happen is this. You are likely, your business is likely to be well patronized compared to somebody that doesn't have the contact. If you don't have people, how will people contact you? Right? For example, let's say you got a small business now. You got people in overseas, in different countries, right? You can as well, they can help you to, by words of mouth, to spread the awareness of your business. So that is what we mean talking about in terms of contact. Here we're going to talk about mentorship. You know what is mentorship? Hello, mentorship. That is another concept that we need to introduce here for you to understand under this context. You know what is a mentor? A mentor is somebody that got experience that can coach you for you to be able to achieve what ordinarily you will not be able to achieve on yourself. Then here we can talk about delegation. You know what is delegation? To delegate, to assign responsibilities, right, to people. Then another important aspect I would like us to talk about here is time management. Time management. You know what is time management? To manage time. When we say time management, what are we talking about? Using your time wisely, right? Like I was explaining to you yesterday, time is limited. Do you know? Time is very limited, right? No, there is no time. It goes very fast. I explained to you yesterday that time doesn't wait for anybody. So, by virtue of that, we must know how to manage time, right? You got several tools that you can use to manage time. We're going to talk about that. So, as we have it here, we say time management is about creating a balance between things that have to be done at work and still having time to eat properly, exercise, rest, and you see, you know, when you look at the way life is, you see, time is so short that we've got a lot of things to do in life that we don't even have enough time to do those type of stuff, right? So if you don't know how to manage time properly, at the end of the day, you discover that you will be able to complete, you will only be able to complete certain tasks as many other tasks will be left behind. So that is why in life you need to have what we call a schedule, right? So in business, in entrepreneurship, in this context, we are going to introduce to you how to manage time by using a diary. You know a diary? Diary. How many of you have seen a diary before? Diary, where you write down things that you need to do. Yeah, diary. Yeah. Okay, how many of you know about that? Or how many of you make use of a diary here? Yeah, because you got a business and you are well acquainted with those tools, right? That thing is very important. Most especially if you are somebody that can easily forget something, right? There is what we call to-do list, right? You write it down. You write your schedule, what you want to do, and allocate your time. Right. Hello. Wake up. So, to effectively manage your time, you need to make use of diary. There is one concept I want to introduce to you here. We call it procrastination. To procrastinate. You know what is procrastination? Yeah, to procrastinate things. For example, yeah, to procrastinate is to something that you need to do now. You're gonna tell yourself that I'm gonna do it later. You see, you keep on putting it forward, and eventually you will end up perhaps not even doing it. Right? That is what we call procrastination, and procrastination is not good. As we have it here, they say procrastination is the thief of time. It's a thief that steals time, right? You start consoling yourself. No, no problem. There is still time. I'm gonna do it later. There is still time. I'm gonna do it later. So if you are somebody that is fond of doing that, it's not good, right? It's gonna eat your time, and at the end of the day, you will not be able to achieve what you set out to achieve, or rather, what you stand to achieve. Like my daughter the other day, I was saying, "Do your work." He said, "No, I'm gonna do it." I said, "No, that is what we call procrastination. It's a disease. It's an evil stuff. We must pray over this stuff so that you stop it. Anything you want to do, you must do it quickly. Don't put it off. For example, you don't know what is going to happen in future, right? As you've got the time to do it now, because nobody know what is going to happen afterwards, right? So, guys, the period is over now. We're going to stop here, and I believe we've achieved much now, right? So let's stop here. So tomorrow we're gonna talk about the master list and the task list. Right. Okay. Can you help me switch it off? Right.